Hello and welcome to the Autism, ADHD and Us 3 podcast with me, Jenny Lucas. We'll be talking all things neurodiversity, including late diagnosis, parenting and everything else that comes in between. This podcast is not intended to be diagnostic. I am not a doctor. These are our personal experiences peppered with research and occasionally the experiences of others. The podcast is intended as a supportive guide through the experience of parenting neurodiverse children as a late diagnosed person, hopefully bringing some relatable stories and laughs along the way. Any relevant links will be in the show notes. Let's get into today's episode.
Hello everybody and welcome along to today's episode of the podcast. I am absolutely delighted to introduce my guests today. I've got Hayley with us from Zone ND and she is going to talk all about sensory processing and wellbeing and how the two things link together. So Hayley, welcome along today. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you for inviting me, Jenny. It's an absolute pleasure.
It's a lovely way to spend a Wednesday morning, just chatting away with somebody. I have to say it's like my ideal thing to do. So I appreciate you being here today.
No, it's great. We might get a disruption though, because it is half term and you know what it's like.
Yeah, we have that pleasure to come next week for us here. So yeah, it's always a fun time. So I just wanted to sort of start off by asking you, and I've got some questions written down. So if those of you that are watching the podcast keep seeing me looking away, I'm referring to my notes. How did you get to the place in your life working with neurodiversity and wanting to help others, where you wanted to create this neurodiverse friendly and inclusive spaces? Like what was your journey to get to this point?
Like any of us really, which is lived experience. Myself and my business partner Debbie, we're both parents to autistic children, and Zoned was kind of born out of frustration and passion. Frustration to the barriers that we continually face in our community. And that could be education, healthcare, just life in general.
Yeah.
And frustration that nobody was doing anything about it and there was nothing out there. And to us, it was obvious that we just need to make the environments that we inhabit or go to more sensory friendly. Because, if you think about what we do as human beings, we're supposed to connect to nature, we're supposed to spend more time outside and la da la la. And what we do is the complete opposite. So our nervous systems are fried all the time. And for somebody who's neurodivergent, it's even more so, it's even more enhanced. So we come together and like every good idea starts, it's over a bottle of wine.
Yeah.
Putting the world to rights. And we come up with it and we launched Zoned in March 2023, and it's been a learning curve. It's been incredibly difficult. We also based our ethos on somebody called Dr. Luke Bearden's golden equation, which is
Luke Bearden, absolute champion,
isn't he? He's amazing. Yeah. So it was his golden equation on autism plus environment equals outcome, and it was just like, of course it is. You change the environment, you change the outcome. So with Debbie's expertise, she's got 35 years of experience in interior design. So it was a no-brainer. It was kind of like, come on, we can do something about this. We can bring all our lived experience expertise together, and we can learn and grow as we do it. And it's been a rocky road, but now everyone's starting to listen, because I don't know about, you run your own business yourself. Everybody wants to know about your qualifications.
Yeah.
Right, what do you specialise in?
What is your right to do this? Why should I listen to you?
Exactly. Where's your doctor? Where's your master's? And it's like, we need to be listening to lived experience experts. We need to be listening to everybody's experiences. If it impacts them, if it's about mental health, neurodiversity, disability in general, other ethnic minority groups. If it impacts you, you need to be listening to their voices. So that's what we campaign for, we advocate for. And we've done it with a few local authorities, and we're working with the college at the moment, and it's sharing our lived experiences, but also making them understand that we all have senses. So when you talk about sensory processing differences, and I will put a caveat, I am not a clinical psychologist or anything like that. I'm an expert by lived experience. And we were saying earlier that if you're neurodivergent and you've got a special interest, you're an expert in it because you want to know everything. So this is where our information comes from. And obviously we do best practices and we do courses and all that sort of stuff. But understanding sensory processing and how it impacts us as human beings is the most inclusive design. It's the most inclusive design, because you can't just say, well, oh, it's only that 20% of the population it impacts.
Yeah.
We all have senses, and the fact of the matter is that it will impact us at some point in the life. If it's not now, as a woman, when you start going through perimenopause and menopause, everything changes. Your capacity to withhold sensory stimuli changes.
I am right there at the moment. I've started my perimenopause journey and I feel like a different person. Not in a good way.
Isn't it? I know, I'm absolutely with you. And that's a whole new podcast. That's something else to deal with. But so that's where we started. It was from lived experience and frustration. And we've done events. I think the biggest event we did was the British Motor Show, which was over 4 days.
Wow.
And as you can imagine, special interest, car fanatics. It was very, very loud and chaotic.
Yeah.
Over 60,000 attendees. And we provided this sort of sanctuary of heaven. And I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it. The most profound impact, and what we didn't realise organically happened, is we built community. We built a safe environment for people to just come up to us and say, thank you. Like one lady, it will stay with me until I die. She come in and she was at the point of overwhelm, and she just looked at me and she just burst into tears. And I was like, oh my God, I'll give her a hug. She said, thank you, because you've done this. It means I feel accepted. I feel seen. So she regulated with her and her kids, and they just chilled, and that's all they needed was like a reset from the stimuli to go, I'm not going to die, I'm okay. And it was, from that, then people were coming up to us and just sharing their struggles about diagnosis or their mental health struggles, and it was just such a beautiful thing. And it was like, this is it. This is what we're supposed to be doing. We need to be doing more of this. The spaces that we work in, that we're learning, that we go to, even healthcare, they're not good for our senses. They're not.
No.
So we need to connect back to that. We need to go right back to the beginning and sort of say, well, what do I like and what do I don't like and why is that? And sort of be more curious about that. And, that's why I'm completely fascinated with sensory processing, especially when it comes to being neurodivergent, because there is a sense which is like my absolute favourite one, and it's called your interoception sense.
Yes.
So this is all of your internal signals. So whether you're hungry, thirsty, tired, need the toilet, whether you're poorly, whether you're in pain, it connects to your emotional regulation, and we are awful at it.
Yeah.
We are awful at it, so and we need to understand what that does. And if we don't connect to our in selves and go, how am I feeling today? How am I actually feeling? Oh God, my back's hurting. Why is that? Oh yeah, it's because I've been sat in a chair for like 8 hours. And why have I got a headache? Oh right, it's because I haven't drunk in 4 hours. It's these signals, because we don't get, I suppose what I'm learning now is that as a young neurodivergent person who's undiagnosed, we get told to sit still, stop doing that, don't do this. And when we're trying to stim, for example, to help regulate ourselves, we get told to sit still. So then we're like, oh, okay, I can't do that. So I won't, if I get that signal that I need to do it, I won't do it. I'll just ignore it. And then the whole thing spirals on, and then our needs don't get met. We don't drink, we don't eat, we don't rest, we burn ourselves out. We don't process our emotions in a healthy way. And it just spirals on from that. So I think it's so important to understand, as not just children, as adults, if we can understand what regulates us, so what our triggers and our soothers are, then we can be better parents and better people, and put
Definitely.
more boundaries in place from that.
Oh, there's just so much that I have resonated with what you were saying there, and I actually wrote a couple of things down. I would have been that woman who come up to you and burst into tears in a busy environment. I had an incident actually in the last couple of weeks where I was getting on a plane at Heathrow and flying up to Glasgow, and I was on my own, had my lanyard on, and the gate staff at Heathrow could not have been less helpful, and it was an awful experience, and I was that woman that was just this 40-year-old woman in amongst this crowd of complete strangers just crying, silently crying, waiting to get on the plane. And I thought, this is so horribly embarrassing, but I thought if I'd had one person that had pulled me aside and gone, how can I help?
Yeah.
That would have been a completely different experience. But anyway, so that would have been me. I would have been crying in your sensory space.
Why can we not do that as human beings?
Yeah.
It just baffles me, and I know the biggest thing for anybody is to ask for help, but be empathetic. If you see somebody upset,
Yeah.
I naturally go, can I help? Like, what is it?
Yeah.
It's just, don't even get me started on the education system. Just don't.
Former teacher, former being the operative word. I totally get it from both perspectives as a teacher and for the children. But the other thing that really intrigues me about what you do, when you were talking about the car show, for them to have been forward thinking enough to engage your services, and you then to have provided that sensory safe space, that makes something like that accessible for so many more people. Because the older I have gotten, and the more, I mean, I'm late diagnosed myself. I only knew within the last couple of years that I'm autistic and ADHD, because I got to the point of burnout. And it's always, I think, that's where so many women, I think in particular, find out about their neurodivergences. Suddenly they can no longer function in their lives, and they're going, what has happened to me?
Yeah.
And it's because you're conforming from such a young age. What you were saying there about, children particularly, that sit still. And just a point on that, I have to say just a little shout out to my youngest daughter's school. For all their flaws in the system, they have been really good with her in terms of, she has got a wobble cushion, she is allowed to stim. Sometimes she will stand when they're giving a teacher input, she'll just stand, or she'll stand and wriggle at the back of the classroom. And they have been accommodating to allow her to do that. It doesn't distract the other children in the class. And she has commented on herself at 9 years old how important that is for her to be able to do that and be able to put her hand up and say, I need a movement break, and they go for a little lap around the playground. And that just allows her little brain to be able to function so that she can access it in the same way as everybody else.
Process information. Movement is so important to help us process information.
So important. But allowing that, the idea of going to somewhere really busy, but knowing that, do you know what, if I need to take some time out, there's a place where I can go and do that, and then I can come back out and no one's going to judge me for it, and no one's going to roll their eyes and say this is a waste of time or whatever. That would just make it so much more accessible for so many people. And I know that there are little accommodations, you could wear noise cancelling headphones or get some cam look plugs, but sometimes it's just like you need it's not just a sound break, it's a visual break, it's a expectations break. You know what I mean? You just
hide away.
Exactly. You just need a few minutes to just not have to be even seen. What's the word? When you're not being sort of perceived all the time. It's just like exactly. But what you said there about sensory processing, and what really fascinates me about it is the dynamic aspect to sensory processing, because as we know, autism in particular it can be a fluctuating thing in terms of your sensitivities. And like you mentioned with perimenopause, that is very much my experience in life at the moment. Is there's some days I can feel I can take on the world, and the external noise, I feel like, in all of my senses is minimum, and I'm able to cope with it. And there's other days where it's just like too much and too overwhelming, and I can't do what I was able to do yesterday. And I think that's really difficult for people to understand who don't experience it, is how can it fluctuate? How come you could do that yesterday but now you're saying you can't? And that, I think that's
this is the thing, and this is what we try to do. So if we sort of strip right back, because everyone's probably thinking, well, how do I know what I like, and how can I manage my limitations, and how can I sort of, you know, make sure that I don't reach overwhelm. And the way I like to look at it is that we all have a sensory cup, okay? And we'll get drops of stimulation throughout the day.
Yeah.
And that can be from anywhere, okay? And if you're neurodivergent, we don't have a cup. We have a thimble, okay? So when you think about sensory processing, the senses' job in general is to gather information from the environment that we're in, feed it back to our nervous system to tell us whether there's a threat and we need to run because we're about to die, or if it's safe and we can rest. And that's like way back into the cavemans. That's ingrained in our nervous system. That's part of being human, okay? So if we are ignoring that sense, okay, for example, have you ever gone into a place like a restaurant or a bar or somewhere and automatically gone, oh God, I don't like it in here. But you don't know why. Your nervous system's going, dude, no, let's go. We're not safe. Go. You know, like when the vibe's off kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
We're ignoring that. We're pushing it down because it's not deemed as socially acceptable. So we don't put a boundary in place. When we don't feel safe, we push past it and we stiff upper lip kind of mentality, and we go on with it. So what can we do? We can seriously think about, with sensory processing, it's as simple as drawing back to when you were a kid, and even now as an adult. What do you really enjoy? What do you seek out? What makes you feel happy and content? And then on the other side, what do you absolutely hate? What makes you cringe? What makes you feel uncomfortable? And what do you absolutely avoid? Okay, so that is your soothers and your triggers. Simple. So then when you apply that to your life and you put your sort of sensory detective lens on, you're like, oh, that's why I don't like going there, because it's got that, and it's that sound and that smell and that texture. You just avoid it then, and then you can put a boundary in place and go, no, I'm not going there because it's not good for my body, it's not good for me. So when you start applying that to life and you do things that make you feel good and do more of that, it eventually levels out and you start to feel more calm, less anxious. If you think about where is the perfect space or environment for everybody, and there is one, it's our homes, right?
Yeah.
That's where we come in and we go, oh, thank God I'm home. Yeah. Thank God that was a terrible day. Or even when you come back from holiday, you may have had the best holiday, but you're so glad to get home because your nervous system's like, oh, thank God.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's understanding that, is connecting back to that, and looking at things that you, even down to smells, like I stim a lot with smells. So I love perfume, I love lavender if I'm feeling anxious, smells, flowers, all those sort of things. That's a stim. That's something I seek out to help ground me. It even could be down to how you have your coffee or how you have your tea, or a certain comfort food. If you think about when a child is an autistic individual, and my son does this, if he's struggling, whether he's poorly or something like that, and his sensory capacity is lessened, he'll go for his predictable foods, which is McCain oven fried chips, broccoli, and Yorkshire puddings. And he'll do that every day because it's consistently the same. Because anything else puts him in overwhelm and he can't do it. It's too much. So if we think about how we can apply that to life, and I think that's the key to us sort of being empowered. And we can then put boundaries in place and say, no, I don't want to do that because I'll be exhausted for 3 days because I've burnt my nervous system out. Yeah.
It's funny what you say there about the food. That is something that even as an adult, I have sort of grasped an awareness of, is that there's sometimes where I can't make decisions about food. I don't know what it is that I want. I can't stick to a healthy eating plan and a diet. And I've learned that is because there's too much else going on. So it's almost like decision paralysis because my system is overwhelmed. And it's like I want the quickest first thing that is going to be remotely satisfying. I have a strange experience with food. It's almost like I have to like imagine trying it on first before my body goes, yeah, we fancy that. Yeah, we quite fancy a McDonald's, or we quite fancy a healthy whatever. If it doesn't feel right in my body, I can't do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that it's useful to start noticing these things about yourself, because I know now I try not to shame myself too much around that kind of, why am I not sticking to the diet, or why have I had like 3 Costas this week? It's because things are hectic and I'm at capacity. So you start to have an awareness of that, and you go, okay, where can I take things off my plate so that I can sort of calm down enough to be back in control of these things? It is absolutely fascinating, I have to say.
If you think about it, Jenny, when even as parents, we always, or mums in general, our needs are always last, right?
Of course, yeah.
So our thimble, whatever, is either completely overwhelmed and we're burnt out, and we never really meet our basic needs.
Yeah.
And one thing that I do now, without even, I used to feel quite shameful about it and guilty, but now I'm just like, no, I need this. Like, this keeps me going. And we all do it in this house, and I recommend that every neurodivergent household does it. And it's a low demand day, okay?
Yeah.
Because demands are just too much. When we're all burnt out from school, from work, and we go to a half term, or if it's, summer holidays or Christmas period, that first week is chaos because nobody's regulated, everyone's burnt out. So we have low demands, and we all allow people to do what they want to do. My daughter will be doing her art, or going on TikTok, whatever she wants. Then my son will be doing his animations and his gaming. My partner will be doing his models, like painting, or doing his martial arts, and I'll be reading a book or going for nature walks. And we do that, and we don't necessarily have to have a conversation with each other at this point. It's just like we're in our own little bubbles, we're good, we're alone, but we're together.
Yes.
So there's no demand that you have to sit there and you have to do this, and we have to go see family, and we must go to that place, and we must do what everyone else does because, white picket fence family kind of thing. You must take your child to everything going, otherwise you're a terrible parent because, you're not going on holiday 4 times a year. Well, it's like, actually, for my family, they'd much prefer a day out and then come home because that's their safe space. They feel psychologically safe. So you have to rewrite the narrative and define your family's normal. Yeah.
Oh, definitely. And, it's interesting, especially over the last sort of few years, I had that sort of imagery of the white picket fence family, if you like. We live quite near a nature reserve, and when I was pregnant with my eldest and when she was little and we'd go for walks, and especially on Sundays, you'd see dads out doing stuff, dad's out doing the bike rides, dad's out, it's dad's Sunday, let's go out and do stuff. And I thought, oh, that'd be nice. That'd be lovely when I can have some time on a Sunday. And our lives just never really turned out like that. We do, or we certainly have done, everything together as a family all the time. And over the last couple of years, I have realised, as I've entered perimenopause, I no longer have capacity to do all of the things all of the time, and that it is okay for us to do separate things, and we still love each other, and it's, we're still a family. And that idea of parallel play in terms of sort of what can be really useful for somebody who's on the autism spectrum, or even body doubling, if you refer to it in that terminology as a person with ADHD. We do that quite a lot in our household. Like you've said, we will all be in our spaces doing our things, quite happy that no one is being neglected for anything. We can go and talk to each other, but we are just doing whatever we need to do to regulate. And I think that is, accepting that is so important, and particularly for those of us that are sort of Gen X or millennials that are breaking the generational cycles and stuff. My husband and I did a podcast about how we parent differently a couple of months ago, and it's that idea of how can we do things differently to the way we were brought up in a way that is beneficial, not to like slag off our parents or say they did a terrible job, but just with the information we know now, how can we further accommodate everybody's needs, and being aware of that, sort of not comparing yourselves to what normal looks like is so important.
Yeah, 100%. I think because racked with guilt, and you have to, like I said, you have to find a new normal. And we always have a conversation. We're like, what do you guys want to do today? And they look at me like, I don't want to do anything. And it's like, well, we need to get outside. We need to do something. And it's like, fine, we'll go for a walk. But, you know, even that, when they're burnt out, is a chore.
Yeah.
So it's like, is it actually worth it? Is it going to bring them joy? No, that's me having societal pressure as a parent going, get outside and, you know, stop neglecting your kids. Until you live it, you can't judge it. You just, you can't. You've got to be kind to yourself. You really have.
Yeah. And it's amazing what happens once you can start to because it's not an overnight process by any stretch, but once you can start to let go of that guilt that you're carrying about keeping up appearances, or I should be doing X, Y, Z, you know, or what if my kids end up just staring at video games and screens for the rest of their lives and I'm not providing with opportunities. Like that is such a fear mindset. Once you know that they are, and trust them enough that they can find ways to regulate and you can support them with that, then what you see is that when they are regulated, they want to do the things, they want to go for day trips, they want to hang out, they want to, you know, and it's sort of having enough faith in them and you that allowing yourself that time to rest and recuperate means you will have the capacity to do the things, and not that you're suddenly going to turn into a lazy arsehole and never want to spend time with other human beings ever again. And that has taken quite a long time for me to accept, if you like, that I'm not just giving in and becoming sort of lazy.
Yeah.
Can I ask then, in terms of as parents, because obviously we have a tricky time as neurodivergent parents, parenting neurodivergent children. That's a fun combination. We've talked quite a lot about how we can support ourselves as adults and sort of having that level of acceptance around the fact that we will have sensory needs and trying to figure out what they are. Yeah. How can we support our kids to do the same sort of thing so that they know what their limits are and are comfortable listening to their bodies?
I think I'm better at doing that for my kids than I am myself.
Definitely.
Even down to the fact it is like, how is everybody's water intake today? Drinking, eating, how are we doing? In the meantime, I've completely forgot myself.
Yeah.
I think it's down to repetition. And, you know, it's writing it down, it's having visual reminders. For some reason, I drink more water out of a bottle rather than a
Definitely.
cup. And I think
100%.
it's because the whole executive function, I have to go to the sink to fill it up, or, you know, just having a bottle by, I'm drinking more. So it's these little hacks. But I think, honestly, you have to understand sensory processing as a whole and what each sense does. And then once you understand your sensory profile, you can then go, that's why they don't like that. That's why they don't like that. Okay, I'm going to remove that because that's a trigger. You almost have to sort of really study them individually.
Yeah.
But as a parent, you naturally know it anyway.
Yeah.
It could be an air freshener or something silly that's stopping them or making them feel unregulated. It's allowing them to stim and explain what that is.
Yeah.
You know, if you could spend 10 minutes in my household, it's like I actually want to have a neurodivergent goggle box.
Oh my God, that would be so affirming, wouldn't it?
It's hilarious, yeah. You know, watching us all stim, we kitchen dance, we all enjoy it. It's being together as a family and recognising that we all do these things to help us feel safe and empowering them because of that. Because what I can't stand and what I still think's wrong with society is that you don't fully understand yourself until you're an adult because you have to research it. If children know they're different, if they know they're autistic, they should know what autistic life means.
Yes.
And that you are, you know, neurologically different in a way, but not as a human being. You still have those same needs. And we need to empower our children and say, look, autistic means this. You know, ADHD means that. And this is how it presents in me. And this is how it presents in you. So that's why you need that. Tell them. Knowledge is key. Children are inquisitive anyway. And I always say, you know, even to my son, you know why you're doing that, right? That's your vestibular and your proprioception. And you need to do that so you can focus or feel more grounded. And he's like, I know. I just like doing it.
Yeah.
But it's given him that knowledge. I don't
Yeah.
want him to become a 41-year-old struggling to identify with who they are as a person,
Yeah.
because nobody's told him what being autistic and ADHD means.
Definitely.
And even down to the school that he's in, and it's an incredible school, and that's a whole nother story, but we had a battle to get him in there.
Yeah.
They still don't do that. And I'm like, do you tell them about them being autistic? Do you teach them about autism and neurodiversity? And they're like, oh no, we don't do that. Why? Why not?
Yeah.
Why can we not learn that in school?
Yeah.
Especially if it's a specialist school.
Yeah.
That looks after neurodivergent kids. Like, we need to understand ourselves. If we don't understand ourselves, then we don't put boundaries in place.
Yeah.
We people please. It leads to poor mental health because you start questioning who you are as a person and why you don't fit in. And I just think knowledge is key, and being open and honest. That's what I would do. I would recommend that. And however that looks for you, you've got to make it unique to you. I can't just say that this is how you do it and it's going to work for your family, because your family is different to mine. But it's being open and honest and talking about it and sharing that information. And if you don't know the answer, then say, right, okay, I don't know the answer right now, but I'm going to go find out.
Yeah. That's incredibly powerful. And I have to say, I feel the same when people yap on, why are we labelling kids? Why do we need to give them a label? Because society has already labelled them. They've labelled them as lazy, they've labelled them as disruptive, they've labelled them as all other kinds of negative, horrible things that shame that person into thinking they need to change something about themselves. And that, as you say, creates a whole host of mental health difficulties going forward, addiction issues. Like, there's a whole plethora of problems that come with people not understanding who they are. So that label of autism and ADHD, I'll be honest, in my own life, it's like opening Pandora's box for myself, finding out late, which is why I'm so keen for my children to understand themselves as children and not use that as a limit to anything that they can access in the world, but use it as a tool so that they know if they're going into a situation that is potentially going to be triggering for them in some way, they've got tools where they can work around it, where they know how to accommodate themselves and still achieve in a way that is really healthy for them and their well-being. I think that is so key.
100%. And also, more importantly, that they know it's not their fault and they're not broken.
Yeah.
Because that haunted me my whole life.
Yeah.
There's something wrong with me. I always felt different. Everyone just like, oh, that's just Hayley. That's just Hayley. I put on this bravado of a completely different person. And I think, I don't know if there is I'd like to see the statistics, but actually I think it was lockdown where I think a lot of us realised, oh dear, I'm not dealing too good, and we're putting it down to lockdown, but actually it's because we were isolating for ages and took our masks off and then forgot how to put them back on.
Yeah.
So I think that's a massive unravelling of why there's such a hike in it. It's lonely, it's scary, but in a way you're not alone because of podcasts and conversations like this, people you can connect to.
Definitely.
I'm quite lucky, actually, Jenny. The friends that I went to school with have turned out to be neurodivergent too. So
what a surprise. I could have seen that coming.
But sometimes that doesn't happen. Sometimes, people aren't as lucky as me, and they do have that isolation and not being able to find their tribe. And I think that's another thing as well. You need to find neurodivergent people. If you don't have neurodivergent people in your life, go find them. Go find them online. Go find them in your local area. Even if it's listening to a podcast, find somebody that relates to you, because you are not broken. Society is.
Yeah. Definitely. And I think that was one of the main reasons why I started this podcast, was to build that sense of community, because being ADHD is, I've discovered a kind of unique experience to those that are just purely ADHD or purely autistic. There's definitely different ways that we experience the world. And parenting children who are also neurodivergent there just isn't that much support out there for us still at this time. And so that's why I'm here doing this, because if 2 years ago I could have listened to something like this and gone, oh my God, I think about that, or I feel that, or that happens to me, I would have just felt so, it would have been so affirming and so reassuring to, not everybody's going to have absolutely carbon copy experiences of each other, but to just, I love being on sort of ADHD TikTok, if you like, and you see in the comments, like, I've never had a unique experience in my life. And that is so affirming, because you think, oh my gosh, I'm not the only person that has thought this or has felt like this. And that's, it's okay. It's okay to have these experiences.
Yes.
It is just
permission to be authentic.
Yes.
I think that
Absolutely.
with that as well, and going on to the whole TikTok thing, is what scares me the most about that. And I will be starting my own podcast around this. It's toxic positivity.
Oh, yes.
Influencers who identify as being neurodivergent.
Yeah.
And they're showing, don't get me wrong, I love that they're successful out of it, but they're showcasing this massive celebrity lifestyle.
Yeah.
And people are like, oh man, I can't do that. Like,
Yeah.
I can barely get out of bed, but we need to share the bad and the good. We need to know that, well, Tuesday I may have been glamming it up on the red carpet, but like Friday, no, I'm under my duvet.
Yeah. Yeah.
We need to know that there is a seesaw to this. And like, again, it comes from what capacity you have. If you've done something that's really, really social or tiring, then you're going to be burnt out for the next 2 days.
Yeah. And
a new rhythm.
Exactly, and accepting that is something that certainly people in my own personal world still struggle with, is that idea that that's not an excuse. It's like, but 10 years ago you used to be able to socialise and you loved it, and I'm like, I do still enjoy socialising, it's just I understand there is a cost, and I now see what that cost is, and I have to prepare for it. It's not having a defeatist attitude or giving into the disability label. It's like I'm literally accommodating myself in a way that means that I can feel comfortable and not be burnt out constantly.
But in a way as well, like, how dare they say that? What if I don't want to do something, I shouldn't have to do it. Don't force me and don't make me feel guilty for doing it. It's a really hard process, because you kind of lose friends and family members in the process of identifying who you are. Yeah.
I reiterate what I said earlier, and then the reason that we're all here is I don't want my kids to do that. I don't want my kids to kind of get to their 30s and think, why is my whole life falling apart? Like, because they'll be sorted. They're going to be different from me. They're going to understand themselves better. Oh my God, I have so enjoyed this.
It's amazing. I've loved it. I think we could carry on chatting.
Yeah, definitely. There's definitely a whole host of things that we can do several other podcast episodes on. But before we finish, I just want to make sure that people know where they can go and find out more information about you and what you do, because obviously I'm going to add all your links to the show notes so people can just go and directly click on following you on socials or finding your website. But how can people engage more with you to engage with your services?
I'm more than happy to be contacted by email or even give me a call, but we are all over the socials, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn, even contact me on LinkedIn if you're not on LinkedIn. Like I said, just send me an email. I'm always up for having conversations. We do inclusive spaces, but that's just one element of what we provide. And we're really sort of moving into the sort of education sector now. So any kind of teachers or education sectors that want to know how to prevent sensory overwhelm and empower their students and to create sensory friendly environments, then I'm happy to have a chat. Amazing, that's great. And I love the way that because the company's zoned but the MD's capitalised at the end, so that is just, it's genius. I absolutely love it. Thank you, Hayley, so much for talking with me today. I have absolutely really enjoyed it, and I am certain that you will be back on at some point in the future to talk about something else. Thank you. So Jenny. Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for asking me to be a guest.